On Saturday, Michigan lost to Notre Dame 17-24. And despite the score, I know the score kind of makes it sound like it was a close game. Notre Dame dominated Michigan. Michigan came out and did not look ready to play. I watched the Notre Dame receivers were catching every single pass thrown their way. The Notre Dame's defensive line dominated. It's interesting. Michigan only ran for 58 yards. That's not good. And Michigan's offense didn't score a touchdown until there was 2 minutes and 18 seconds left in the game. And Michigan's only touchdown in the first half, ironically, came off of a kickoff. Michigan did not look good. Michigan got steamrolled by Notre Dame. And it's Jim Harbaugh's fault. Jim Harbaugh is the reason why Michigan got beat so badly by Notre Dame. See, if you're at a funeral and if you're at a funeral and your kids are screaming and yelling and freaking out because they weren't told how to react and how to behave at a funeral, do you blame the parents or the kids? You blame the parents because the parents did not prepare their kids for that situation. Michigan was not ready to face Notre Dame, and that's Jim Harbaugh's fault. So many people are calling for Jim Harbaugh's job. I don't know I think that's a little extreme, but I want to talk about that notion because we're learning kind of who Jim Harbaugh is. So here's my perspective on Jim Harbaugh. And you can people make a ton of arguments to say, Jim Harbaugh never beat Ohio State. He can't beat Michigan State. He loses on the road all the time. Look, say whatever you want. Here's the facts about Jim Harbaugh. In 3 years at Michigan, Jim Harbaugh is 10-3, 10-3, and 8-5. Jim Harbaugh has been to 3 bowl games. He's won one of them. I mean, he does have a 1-2 losing record in bowl games. But every single year Jim Harbaugh has been at Michigan, they have been to a bowl game. And then you got to consider, what was Michigan like before Jim Harbaugh got there? See, before Jim Harbaugh got there were 7 years with 2 coaches, Rich Rodriguez and Brady Hoke. In those 7 years, Michigan was 46-42. They won 52% of their games. They had a random 11-2 season, but they also had a season that was 3-9. They had a 5-7 season. And they went to 4 bowl games in 7 years. So they were 1-3 in those bowl games. Again, in those 7 years, they won 52% of their games. That's not good. So Jim Harbaugh steps in. He's 28-12 since getting to Michigan. He wins 70% of his games, and every single year Jim Harbaugh has been at Michigan, they've gone to a bowl game. Doesn't mean they win, but it means they go. We now know what Jim Harbaugh is, but we also know what he is not. See, Jim Harbaugh's a coach that wins 70% of his games. But I think it's interesting, Jim Harbaugh's going to get fired for the same reason Mark Richt got fired by Georgia a couple years ago. See, a couple years ago, Mark Richt was a great coach for Georgia. He averaged 10 wins a year. But the problem was he was always overshadowed by Nick Saban at Alabama. Nick Saban was off winning titles, losing 1-2 games a year. Mark Richt was a good coach, but he wasn't good enough. Jim Harbaugh wins 70% of his games. It's encouraging. The problem is Urban Meyer at Ohio State wins more. Urban Meyer is 74-8 at Ohio State. He wins 90% of his games. Jim Harbaugh's going to get fired, and it's because of Urban Meyer at Ohio State. Again, averaging 70%, winning 70% of your games, averaging 10 wins a season, that looks great until you look at Ohio State and you realize, oh, Ohio State's unbelievable. So I repeat, we know what Jim Harbaugh is. He's fun. He's a solid coach. He gives us good sound bites. He's enjoyable. He takes his team to bowl games every year. He wins 70% of his games. But again, we also know what Jim Harbaugh is not. And Jim Harbaugh, sadly, is not Urban Meyer. Jim Harbaugh lives in the shadow of Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer is a next step above Jim Harbaugh. Eventually, Michigan's going to get tired of Jim Harbaugh. They're going to move on. I'm not saying it's right. I would keep Jim Harbaugh. I like him. He wins games. He's still better than it was. He's better than most college coaches. Would you rather go back to being 52%? I don't think so. But eventually, Jim Harbaugh's going to get fired from Michigan because he's the highest paid employee in Michigan. He's the highest paid state employee in the state of Michigan, Jim Harbaugh is. And that means people expect national championships. They don't want just to win 70% of their games. They want you to be Urban Meyer. They want you to win 90% of your games. Jim Harbaugh isn't enough for the expectations of Michigan. Sad but true. He's going to get fired because of Urban Meyer. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Zach Schaumler. This is my show, Strong Opinion Sports. It's my pride and joy. I'm very proud of it. If you're new to Strong Opinion Sports, you can subscribe to it on iTunes, SoundCloud, on YouTube. You can find the full entire hour-long podcast on YouTube, or you can find more shorter breakout videos like the one you just watched. And if you like what I had to say, maybe you hate what I had to say, share this with your friends. Share it on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever it is. Help me grow Strong Opinion Sports by telling your friends about the show. My name is Zach Schaumler. Have a great day.